She had lost everything: her husband, her home, even her reason to keep walking. Cold, hungry, and forgotten by the world, a lonely widow sat on the edge of despair, praying for nothing more than a place to belong. But that night, 2 little girls appeared out of the darkness, and the words they spoke would shatter her heart, leaving her frozen in tears. With trembling voices, they said, "You want a home, and we need a bride for our father." What could 2 innocent children possibly mean by such words? And why, of all people, did they choose a broken widow to carry their plea? What followed would not only change her life forever, but it would expose a secret buried deep in their father's soul, one that would test the very limits of love, sacrifice, and faith. The night was colder than usual, and the wind carried with it the bite of hunger and the whisper of despair. On the corner of a forgotten street sat a woman, her shawl thin and frayed, her hands trembling as she tried to shield herself from the chill. She was a widow, stripped of the life she once knew, left with nothing but memories of a love that had long turned to dust. Her eyes, hollow yet still clinging to dignity, searched the darkness for a reason to go on. She had no home, no family, no warmth waiting for her, just the endless road of loneliness. People passed her by without a glance, some too hurried, others too proud to acknowledge her presence. She had grown used to being invisible, but deep inside her heart beat a silent cry: "All I want is a home, just a place where I belong." It was in that silent night of despair that fate turned its gaze upon her. From the shadows of the lamplight came the sound of footsteps, soft, uncertain, and almost timid. 2 little girls, no older than 10, appeared in front of her. Their faces were pale from the night air, but their eyes held a strange glow of determination. They stood close together, clutching one another's hands, as if gathering courage. From their bond, the widow lifted her head, expecting them to pass by like everyone else. But they did not. Instead, they stopped directly before her. One of the girls, with curls framing her small face, whispered words that made the widow's heart stop beating for a moment. "You want a home," the child began, her voice quivering. "And we need a bride for our father." The widow blinked, certain she had misheard. A bride for their father. She stared at the children, confused and shaken, as though she had suddenly stepped into someone else's dream. But the girls didn't move, didn't laugh, didn't run away. Their faces were earnest, their eyes wide with longing, and their words were real. The second twin, her voice softer, added, "Please, we don't want to lose him. We don't want to be alone. We thought maybe you could help." The widow's breath caught in her throat. In all her days of wandering, in all her nights of praying for a miracle, she had never imagined such words would be spoken to her. A home had always been her desperate wish, but this was beyond reason. Her lips trembled. "Child, what are you saying?" The twins glanced at each other, their small fingers tightening as though afraid the widow might reject them. Then, bravely, they spoke again, their voices weaving a story that pierced deeper with each word. "Our mother died," said the first girl, tears pooling in her eyes. "We see our father sit alone every night, his eyes full of sadness. He works hard for us, but he doesn't smile anymore. We hear him praying when he thinks we're asleep, praying for someone to care for us, for him." The second girl continued, her chin trembling. "We're just little. We can't fill the empty space in his heart. We tried, but we know he's hurting. We thought maybe God sent you." The widow's body froze. The children's words wrapped around her heart like chains, heavy, binding, impossible to ignore. She, who had begged the world for mercy, was now being asked to become mercy itself. She, who had lost everything, was suddenly seen as someone who could give everything. Tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked under the weight of emotions. I am just a poor widow. I have nothing to give." But the girls shook their heads, almost in unison. "You have kindness," one whispered. "You looked at us without anger, without hate. That's enough. That's what our father needs. That's what we need." The widow lowered her face into her hands, her shoulders trembling as the storm inside her raged. She had dreamed of a home, but never like this. Could it be true? Could these 2 innocent souls really see her as an answer to their prayers? Or was this a cruel trick of fate, dangling hope before her only to snatch it away again? The twins stepped closer, their little hands reaching out to touch her arm. The contact was light, almost fragile, but it sent warmth flooding through the widow's veins. Warmth she had not felt in years. The first girl whispered again, her voice breaking into sobs. "Please, don't say no. We can't lose him. If he breaks, we'll be alone in this world. We just want him to smile again. We just want a family." The widow's tears streamed freely now, falling onto her worn shawl. She had begged for bread and been given scraps. She had begged for shelter and been turned away. But here, 2 children were begging her, begging for her heart, begging for her to save them. The streets seemed to vanish around them, the cold air forgotten. There was only the widow and the twin girls, their fragile plea hanging between them like a bridge suspended over an abyss. One step could change everything. Her heart thundered in her chest. She could feel the weight of destiny pressing upon her, urging her to answer, but fear fought just as fiercely. She was broken, worn, and afraid of hope. Could she take such a step? Could she risk shattering not only her own heart, but the hearts of these innocent children? The silence stretched long, broken only by the quiet sobs of the girls. The widow looked into their tearful eyes, and something inside her began to shift. For the first time in years, she was not invisible. She was needed, desired, not for what she had, but for who she was. Her lips parted, trembling with words she had not yet decided to say. But before she could answer, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the distance. A shadow appeared, tall and broad, moving steadily toward them. The girls instantly turned, their eyes lighting up with recognition. "Father," they breathed, relief and fear mixing in their tones. The widow froze as the figure drew closer. Her heart pounded louder with every step he took. This was him, the man whose life the girls wanted her to mend. This was the stranger who carried the other half of the plea. And in that moment, as the man's shadow fell over them, the widow realized her world was about to change forever. The widow's breath caught in her chest as the figure stepped into the light. The man was tall, his shoulders broad, his clothes worn from labor. Yet there was an undeniable strength in the way he carried himself. His face bore lines of grief and exhaustion, but beneath them lay a quiet nobility, the kind that only hardship could carve. His eyes, however, were the most striking. They carried a depth of sorrow that seemed to echo the widow's own. "Father," the twins cried, rushing into his arms. He bent down, gathering them close, his rough hands trembling as he kissed their foreheads. The widow watched silently, her heart tightening at the sight. There was love here, deep and undeniable, but also a gaping wound that time had failed to heal. When his gaze lifted, it landed on her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The night air thickened, heavy with unspoken questions. The twins clung to him, whispering hurriedly, "We found her. Father, she needs a home, and we need a bride for you." The man stiffened, his eyes darkening. With shock, he looked from his daughters to the widow, then back again, as though unsure he had heard correctly. His jaw tightened. "Girls," he said firmly, "this is not something for you to decide." But the twins shook their heads, tears welling up once more. "We can't lose you," one whispered desperately. "We see you alone every night. We hear your prayers. We don't want to wake up one day and find you gone. Please, Father, don't send her away." The widow's throat constricted. She wanted to speak, to ease the tension, but fear held her silent. What could she possibly say to this man? She was nothing but a wanderer, a widow with empty hands and a weary soul. How could she stand before him as anything more? The man straightened, his voice steady yet laced with sorrow. "Girls, you don't understand. She is a stranger. She owes us nothing. And his voice faltered, "I cannot ask her to carry the burden of our broken lives." The twins clung tighter to him, their cries breaking into the stillness of the night. The widow felt each sob pierce her heart. Like a blade, these children were pleading not out of mischief or innocence, but out of raw, desperate need. And she could not turn away. Summoning what courage remained, she stepped forward. Her voice trembled, yet it carried the weight of her soul. "Sir, forgive me. I did not ask for this. I was content to pass unnoticed, to survive another day. But your daughters, they saw me. They spoke words I could not ignore. I am nothing. I have nothing. Yet if it means giving them hope, if it means keeping you whole, then perhaps God placed me here tonight for a reason." The man's eyes searched hers, wary yet filled with something deeper, something he could not conceal. Pain, yes, but also recognition. He saw in her the same loneliness that haunted him, the same hollow ache that sleep never cured. For a long moment, silence reigned. Only the sound of the twins' soft sobs filled the air. Then, slowly, the man released a breath he seemed to have held for years. "My name is Samuel," he said quietly. "I have worked these lands with my own hands, built a home with my wife before God called her away. I promised her I would raise our girls strong, but every day I fear I am failing. They see more than I wish they did. They see my weakness, my sorrow." His voice broke, just for an instant, before he steadied it. "And yet, here you stand, a stranger brought to my doorstep by their innocent hearts. Perhaps it is not my place to question why." The widow swallowed hard, her own tears threatening to spill again. "My name is Eliza," she whispered. "I was once a wife too. I lost him, and with him, I lost my place in the world. I have wandered ever since, searching for nothing more than a home." Her voice cracked. "Your daughters offered me more than I dared to hope for." The twins' eyes glistened with hope, their small hands tightening around their father's arm. "Please, Father, don't let her go." Samuel looked at them, then at Eliza, his face a storm of conflict. He had built walls around his heart, tall and unyielding, to survive the weight of loss. To let her in would mean tearing them down, risking the wounds reopening. Yet the truth was undeniable: the twins needed her. And perhaps, so did he. He closed his eyes, whispering a prayer only he could hear. When he opened them, the heaviness had not vanished, but something had shifted. "Eliza," he said, his voice steady, "I cannot promise riches, nor ease, nor freedom from sorrow, but I can promise honesty. If you are willing, perhaps we can find our way together. Not for me, not even for you, but for these two souls who need more than either of us can give alone." Eliza's heart swelled, torn between fear and hope. She looked at the twins, their faces wet with tears but glowing with anticipation. For years, she had begged for a place to belong, and now, trembling before this man and his daughters, she realized belonging was being offered to her, not as charity, but as destiny. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Yes, I will stay, I will try." The twins gasped, their sobs turning into cries of joy. They threw themselves around her, their small arms wrapping tightly, as if afraid she might vanish if they let go. Their warmth seeped into her weary bones, chasing away the cold that had lived in her heart for so long. Samuel watched, his expression unreadable, but in his eyes flickered something fragile, something dangerously close to hope. That night, beneath the pale glow of the moon, a widow who had nothing and a father who had lost everything stood on the edge of a new beginning, not as strangers, not yet as family, but as broken souls, daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, God had written their paths to meet. Eliza lifted her gaze to Samuel, her voice soft yet resolute. "I may stumble, I may not know how to heal the wounds you carry, but I promise I will not turn away. Not from you, not from them. If they believe I can be the answer, then I will give everything I have to be worthy of that faith." Samuel's throat tightened, but he nodded slowly. "Then let us begin." And in that single moment, the widow's prayer for a home and the twins' plea for a bride intertwined, weaving a story of sorrow, faith, and fragile hope. What began as a desperate cry in the night had become the first step toward a future none of them had dared to dream. The widow was no longer invisible. She was wanted, needed, loved, it not yet fully, but enough to kindle the flame of tomorrow. And as dawn crept silently across the horizon, Eliza realized she had not just found a home, she had found a family. The days that followed were quiet, yet heavy with change. Eliza moved cautiously within Samuel's home, uncertain of her place but determined to honor the promise she had made. The girls never left her side, their laughter slowly weaving light into the spaces where silence once reigned. For them, her presence was not awkward nor strange, it was salvation. Samuel remained distant at first. He worked from dawn to dusk, his words few, his emotions guarded. Yet, in the evenings, when the twins clung to Eliza's skirts and begged her to tell them stories, Samuel would pause at the doorway, his eyes softening as he listened. Something within him, buried deep beneath years of grief, stirred with every gentle word she spoke, every smile she gave his daughters. One night, as the fire crackled low, Eliza tucked the twins into bed. Their small voices whispered, "Don't ever leave us." She kissed their foreheads, her own tears threatening to fall, and answered, "I will never leave." They drifted into sleep, secure at last in the promise of love. Stepping into the quiet room beyond, Eliza found Samuel staring into the flames. His hands were clenched, his expression torn between strength and vulnerability. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he spoke, his voice low and raw. "I swore I would never love again. I thought if I held on to my pain, I could keep her memory alive. But my daughters saw what I could not. They saw a woman with the courage to stand where I could not, to give when she had nothing." His voice broke. "They saved me by bringing you here." Eliza's heart ached at his confession. She moved closer, her voice trembling but steady. "Samuel, I did not come to replace what you lost. I came because 2 children begged me to carry a burden I thought was too heavy. But in carrying it, I found something I never dreamed I'd hold again: a family, and perhaps a chance to heal." He lifted his gaze, their eyes meeting in the glow of the fire. In that moment, no words were needed. Grief still lingered, but hope burned brighter. The next morning, the twins awoke to a sight they had prayed for in secret: their father and Eliza standing together, not as strangers, but as partners in the fragile beginnings of something new. The girls ran to them, wrapping their arms around both. For the first time in years, Samuel smiled not the weary smile of duty, but the true smile of a man who believed again. Eliza felt the weight of her journey lift. She had wandered without direction, longing only for shelter, but she had been given more than walls or a roof. She had been given purpose, she had been given love, and as the sun rose high over the land, casting golden light across the small home, one truth became clear. What began with a widow's desperate need for belonging, and 2 daughters' tearful plea, had blossomed into a bond no loss could break. They were no longer broken pieces searching for what was lost. They were a family dot, and in the quiet of her heart, Eliza whispered the words she had carried in silence for so long: "I have found my home." Thank you for watching this story to the very end. If it touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today. Don't forget to subscribe to Legacy Ignited for more powerful stories that will move your soul. Your support means the world and keeps these stories alive. Until next time, thank you for being part of this journey.